Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our e-commerce world review focus on the UK. So it's been a hectic week, and I hope you've enjoyed the presentation so far. But for now, as I said, we're looking at the UK, and we do three major reports during the year, and I'm going to draw on those for the update given where we are in 2021, a very dramatic and fast changing year. So once a year, we look at the UK economy and e-commerce market as a whole. And that is our UK e-commerce report. And we'll have the 2021 update come out very soon. We also look at the top performing retailers and brands active in the UK market. And this report, which is the RX UK Top 500, has recently been released. So we'll give you some insight into that. And then every year we do the European e-commerce report, where we take both the top retailers and the economy and compare them across the European landscape. So relatively busy schedule. I do hope you'll get those reports. They are, of course, free of charge to retailers. But we'd love to get your thoughts. So I've tried to summarize and abstract some of the points, but the reports are obviously sizable. So if I've missed something, drop me a note. If you email research@retailx.net, then that'll get through to the whole team, and we'll answer any questions that we're able to there. But also, we hope you'll use that email to tell us what you'd like us to research, because the team are about to pick up both the UK 21 and Europe 21. And so this is a good time to chip in and say what you'd like. Right, that's enough of the intros. Let's get into the meat of today. And you will be pleased to hear it's not just me. I'm joined in the studio by Imran and Alan. Gentlemen, welcome both. Could you firstly, Imran, then Alan, tell us who you are, where you're from, and just in a sentence or two, how you're seeing the UK in 2021. Imran, kick us off, please.
Great. Thanks for having me, Ian. Yeah, so Imran Chowdhury, I'm Head of Strategic Business at Attract. Attract lead in search, merchandise and personalization. We do it for about 300 brands and retailers, from your big boys such as the Waitrose, ASOS, to the likes of Tommy Hilfiger and Beauty Pie. So a really good selection. I think in terms of one thing that I'm kind of observing, and it was in your report, is the continued rise of marketplaces. I think, marketplaces, there's slightly a common enemy that we all have in some respects there, but it is that continued rise of marketplaces, especially what with last year, how they are starting to become even more of a dominant effect. And that kind of raises an opportunity or a bigger need to differentiate, especially in terms of that online experience, but also the overall service that you're giving customers as well. So that's just one of the things that I picked up on in particular.
Great. Well, we will touch on marketplaces, of course. Thanks, Imran. Alan, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on the panel. So I'm Alan Porter. I'm the Director of Product Marketing for Nuxeo. Nuxeo is a industry-leading content services digital asset management platform. We have a large number of very well-known retail brands. We focus in the digital asset management place on consumer packaged goods, fashion, apparel. In fact, Imran just name-checked one of our customers. Thank you very much. So we have a high presence there. And in terms of the UK, one of the things that I've been seeing is actually very early in 2020, we actually did our own research on the UK consumer market and the online consumer market, and started to see a lot of brands moving towards more digital e-commerce type approach. But obviously events of the last 12 months have really accelerated that. And I think that's one of the things I've seen, is that massive acceleration. And I think we're actually going to come out of this a lot further down the digital transformation pipeline or path than I think we thought we were going to be at the beginning of 2020.
Yes,
So.
that's a good point. I mean, people, I think, now can stop talking about digital transformation as if it's the next thing, because while we've all been locked down, it's been transformation central. And we were interviewing some people for our grocery sector report, and the comment that came out, there were two separate quotes. One says, "We've done 5 years development in 5 weeks," and the other said, "We've done 10 years development in 10 weeks." So I think we're probably seeing a theme here of a year a week. At least that's how it feels there. Good. Well, look, welcome both to our distributed studio. So let's just dive in and look at some of the details now, and do chip in as we go through this. Now, first off, let's have a quick look at the makeup of the top 500, and you can see in the UK that fashion dominates by terms of physical numbers of retailers and their size. So between fashion accessories, fashion clothing, fashion footwear, they take the top 3 spaces, with more than half of the index focused on these demanding, high SKU count, fast turning stock sectors. And this, I think, gives a hint as well at why the UK is one of the world's most competitive segments, because if you can make grocery and fashion work, then most of the categories don't hold that much fear, because lessons have been learned. The other thing that I think shows the competitiveness of the UK is the prevalence of UK retailers in the top 500. So nearly 70% of the best performing brands in the UK are British-based businesses. And this isn't a jingoism or a constraint as a result of language. It really is a function of performance. The USA is second, again, a very developed market, easy translated, led by brands selling direct to the UK. And then after that, there's quite a drop until we see Germany, Italy, and France showing up with a dozen or so top 500 rankings. Now, when you look at the European report, of course, you will see that this is the inverse for some of the less mature countries, newer to e-commerce, where they have a couple of indigenous retailers and brands, generally in their own language, that do well. And everything else then is a surge of pan-European power-playing retailers. And so I think if you take a view across Europe, you've got the newer markets, then you've got the middle weights, and then the leading markets tend to have a very strong representation of their own retailers. So that's the shape of the 500. But picking up on what Imran was saying, we now have a difference between what the retailer is and what the customer does, where she points her browser. So on the left, we can see that the retailers there are taking up half of the places, followed by brands now selling direct. This has been a massive growth area. And down in the corner with 22 examples, we have marketplaces. Now, these are your traditional global marketplaces, niche marketplaces, and some retailer-run marketplaces, but so only 22 of them. However, on the right, we see what the great British consumer does with her browser, and basically she's pointing it straight at the marketplaces. So there are a number of reasons for this. The fact they have near infinite stock, the fact that you have multiple people caring immensely about each category, providing expertise, liquidity, appropriate pricing, and so on. But to see this inversion, if you like, which is the marketplaces taking up the traffic that might have gone to retailers, does give pause to thought about the role of the experience. I don't like the word frictionless, but in this case, I'll use it, from see to click to buy to get. It's all done, very, very simply. As well, let's face it, as marketplaces being somewhere you go to get the brands you love. a role formerly undertaken by department stores and multi-category retailers. So Imran, you kindly pointed this out. Thank you, sir. Does this strike you as ringing true in your experience?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's probably a few comments. One being that, and you mentioned it there about there are people there that care immensely about the category that they look after in terms of marketplaces, and I'd agree with you. But I think at the same time, a lot of the products that are within those categories, the volume and the level of SKUs there create a bit of a paradox of choice in terms of confusion for consumers. I also find that because of that volume and the demand on it, and I'm sure AI will come up somewhere, and I'm sorry I brought it up first, but I sense that sometimes AI is used as a bit of a black box there, and actually what is being populated, be it in search results or in recommendations, possibly aren't always in the best interests of a brand that's selling on a marketplace, or for that customer, if they are in that kind of, as you say, that inspire or discovery mode. So I think you, again, for certain categories, for certain brands, I think this is where they need to really step up in terms of that experience and that guided kind of selling, to try and be known as to come direct to us rather than potentially go to the marketplace. If you're buying kind of batteries or to a certain extent consumables, it kind of makes sense, as you say, price, availability, it just gets delivered. But when you're talking about, let's say, luxury or electronics even, I think there is definitely an opportunity to not let the marketplaces win there. Cosmetics is quite interesting. Cosmetics has grown very much so for a lot of marketplaces, but when you look at folks like Beauty Bay and what they've done with the website, it's very much the place to go if you are a beauty addict, and it's lovely how they've crafted the site not only with products but also inline content, and it's all about guiding that kind of journey, that discovery, and actually being more than just selling. During COVID, they did some really interesting things to show we understand things are tough. We understand kind of what you're going through. We're kind of going to hold back on kind of just pushing sales and promotions, and they try to connect people, which really showed what the brand really is. And I think that's where brands and retailers can differentiate, and I think there is a value there. Well, I know there is a value there.
So the differentiation is often, you've mentioned content a few times, and Alan, I'm sure you'll have a view on this, which is often within marketplaces, you have a dichotomy between, on the one hand, the templates are pretty fixed, so the sellers can't do that much. But yet on the flip side, within that template, the love and energy that can be applied is significant. So when you look at the rise of marketplaces, it's often said that retailers can respond by having better, more integrated content. Is that a view that you'd subscribe to, that making a better experience is where you get advantage?
Yeah, definitely. I think this is actually a reflection of the historical way that brands and stuff looked at websites. If you think back to the early days of the web, and even till relatively recently, brands and retailers, their websites were what I would call an inside-out activity. It was a look at us, we're great. It was a marketing platform. To be honest, it was probably nothing more than a digital version of what they used to do in print ads. It was, we're great, come to our store and buy stuff. Well, the marketplaces actually start from the other direction. They start from the outside in. Is like, what's the customer experience going to be like? How can I get people in to find a product and buy a product and ship a product? So that, I think the marketplaces are driving from that customer experience first perspective, while the brands and the retailers traditionally have done from the here we are, come to us type perspective. So I think that's been reflected in the sort of traffic you're seeing, and particularly at the moment, as you said, when we can't get out to a store and have that in-store experience, that we're starting with marketplaces. I'll be completely honest, when I'm online, first thing I do is go to one of the major marketplaces to go look for stuff, and Then I
Well, we
may,
know, Alan, it's Beauty Bay. It's where we all hang out. So
and then I may go to may go to a brand store or something like that. But that's the marketplace is usually where I start. So
yeah, interesting. Now, look, we do. I should mention also do an annual report on marketplaces, and so again. I'm just hoping that one of our team is now going to add in the URL of that so you can get it, but it's on the retailx.net site. We did our first one last year. We're updating that again in September, but we've just announced that we're doing a brands on marketplaces report, the intersection between the brand experience and the marketplace experience. So that starts, so that'll be, I think, released mid-June. So if you still have diaries, mark it for those. Now, we talk about the competitive UK market. I thought it'd be fun just to show that competitiveness is not static. So when we started our research at the back end of 2014, we track around 14,000 direct selling fascias in the UK, and we've been collecting around 300 metrics on the biggest ones, slightly fewer on the smaller ones. These metrics are across 6 dimensions of performance. You can see here in the radar chart on the left that the quantum, the overall index value back in the innocent days of 2016 was a given level. And every year, every aspect of performance has scored more highly. So what we can see is that being good isn't really enough. It's a bit like an expanding universe, which is that even to stand still, you have to be improving. I think this is interesting from a competitive and investment perspective. Again, what's interesting, Chuck, we've mentioned beauty, obviously, thank you, Imran, but the other category that stands out in terms of absolute performance is grocery. And I did mention at the top of the session that we have a grocery sector report. And what's phenomenal about this is that not only have the grocers really pioneered aspects of online shopping, but during the last year, they have flexed, innovated, implemented at enormous scale in very short time periods. And I think what we can see here is people often talk about peak planning. Well, in our research, we found that the grocers were running at between 8 and 45 times their biggest ever day of the year and sustaining that for 2 months. So it's one thing we say, I need a little bit of peak capacity, but when peak becomes 45 times peak and doesn't go away for a fortnight, that's very, very impressive. So we have an innovation report that looks at the areas where they've been investing. And again, that's on our site. Absolutely fascinating. And the only other point I wanted to mention here is that we've been doing consumer surveys to see what the end consumer thinks of the retailers. And what's been very interesting to see is that overall, Her Majesty's British public are very appreciative of the frontline work that retailers overall have been doing, but with a particular thanks to grocers. And the key aspects of their recognition was around things that the grocers are doing to keep the customer safe, but also, did they think that the grocers doing everything they could to keep their frontline staff safe? And so this is, again, an interesting shift in the British consumer for understanding, I think, the frontline role of retail. So we'll keep an eye on that, but good to see. We also then wanted to show how good is good if you want to stand out from the crowd. So if you take the performance value, so across all 6 dimensions of performance, how good do you have to be to get into the top 500? And the short answer is you've got to score 0.4 out of 1. So across everything, you've got to be big and good and consistent. But in order to be elite, you have to be an order of magnitude better than everyone else. So to get into the top 50, you can muscle your way in just by being enormous. To be leading, you've got to be brilliant in many things, but the elite have to be brilliant path setters consistently at scale in everything. And so I do think it's worth celebrating that achievement, because it's no small matter to be able to perform like that consistently. Now, this is my entry for worst slide of the year. So apologies for that, for everybody who who immediately falls over because there's astigmatism has kicked in. I'll just refer you to the sections in the report about this. This is where we're looking at the fulfillment options and the importance of showing stock availability and then getting it into customers' hands. You will find that tomorrow, either morning or lunchtime, I go into this in more depth in the eDelivery 500 ranking. So what I'm going to point out for now is that this is the one area of all performance that has been tuned down this year. So everything else is getting better, we're offering more and more to the customer, but this year we're tuning down the delivery promise we're making. And we're not quite sure why that is. We think it has something to do with lockdown and having to scale so quickly and move so many operations to delivery rather than anything else. But more on that tomorrow in the eDelivery 500.
I think,
so this is a quick, sorry, Imran, go.
So as you know, Ian, I used to work for Sterling. So order management is very much close to my heart. And in some ways, I'm glad this is here because it is an area that needs to be prioritized for retailers. But, if I put my new hat on at Attract, I think what is interesting is how retailers have done more around their merchandising and search around how to ensure that not only is it a case of bestsellers are promoted, but also the assortment is ordered in a way that is one that they can back up with a delivery promise too. So it is something that we've also seen in terms of changing the slant in terms of promotions to ensure that what you're promoting, you do have that inventory and you can deliver that on time. And if you can't, then something, again, the content or the assortment, for example. But I'm with you 100%. This is a really big area for retailers. And
I think, there was a comment I think you made earlier on, which is around stock. So one of the benefits of a marketplace, if you take one that has a very strong consumer level or even an off-price marketplace as well, is that they don't have stock constraints. So if any of our top retailers wants to quadruple its stock, then it doesn't really want to quadruple the warehousing. It doesn't want to have a product lying around for 120 days. So the marketplaces are better, if you like, at absorbing stock lying around in people's houses or other warehouses where you don't have to make same day, next day guaranteed delivery promises and have that within control of your orchestration layer. So absolutely.
And you're seeing a lot of brands also build out their own marketplace capability. I mean, you saw it recently with Mango, you've seen it with M&S, and there's many others. And I think the trick in some ways is to offer that wider selection from third parties, but kind of have that maybe as the backup. So you're promoting your own brand, but where you don't have your own brand, you can also very quickly fall back those alternatives and ensure that you still convert and you still keep the customer.
That's it. Never let a visit go to waste.
And I think that's the trick. That's the trick. Yeah.
And I think we will see more and more of that. Just going to jump in with a couple of examples here. We cover these in more depth in the report, so this is more of a placeholder. But this is quite an interesting shift from, 40% of the business is online within an omni-channel mix to, oh goodness me, it's now 70%. So obviously the question must be, how do you manage 30% of sales in your store? And that's a question we have to put to them at some point. But Alan, I'm just wondering, what do you think about how you can bring a store experience to the web? So if you're a middle class Brit who lives in or within 50 miles of John Lewis store, as you look at their website, you're mentally walking through the store because that's where all middle class people go. But if you just have the web, you don't have the store, how can you bring that experience to life online? So it's not just a thin facsimile or an ordering interface.
This is where a lot of folks are looking at technologies like 3D or augmented reality and things to actually try and bring that sort of experience. I mean, the one thing you're never going to get is, if you're going in for a pair of sneakers, you can't go in and like pick up the sneaker and feel the weight of it, or feel the material or something. So we're still limited in that sense. Literally that sense. We don't have that sense of touch. But pretty much everything else, we can get the visuals, we can get the audio, we can get the video, and we can start doing things like I said, augmented realities to do a virtual walk around the store. I've seen some places where retailers are actually recreating the store online using something like augmented reality, which is also allowing you to do things like personalization or look at, virtual mirrors, upload my own photograph. What's this piece of clothing going to look like on me? Oh, I don't want it in blue. I want it in red. How does it match with this pair of shoes? And doing that sort of experience online. So actually offering some of the things online that you couldn't do in the store, like have access to the complete range of clothes and try them on virtually, which you couldn't necessarily do in a store because it depends what that particular store had in stock at that particular time. And so you've got access to that wider range. So doing things like that, 3D type imagery where you can take a product and do a 360 spin, look at it from every angle and things like that. So taking a lot of that sort of new technology, emerging technology, and as we mentioned earlier on, we're getting that rapid acceleration of implementations of these sorts of technology. And again, using things like AI, sorry to mention it again, but as if you like, the virtual shop assistant to actually help guide you through the purchase process and things like that. So you're never going to totally replicate the in-person store experience, but it is a very interesting question. How do you, as you say, as we come out of this, when 70% of the sales have gone online, how do you now support a store experience with 30% of the sales? Do you change the store experience, and does the store experience use some of that technology that you've been using on the web and bring that into the physical place? Like, do you bring augmented? I've seen some toy retailers before the lockdown were starting to use augmented reality in their stores and things like that. So I think we're at that merge point between where the physical and the digital are not separate things; they're actually a continuation of the same experience.
I think we're seeing consumers as well. Now they're getting more mobile savvy, especially in the last year, are wanting to use the mobile as a sort of remote control for their interaction with the retailer. So, one of the things about John Lewis is they're bringing capabilities that previously didn't have a digital dimension. So stylist advice, clienteling, where you need a workflow to support the staff, which you then need to open to the consumer in an attractive, usable, informative way. So if you like, this sort of middleware, the operational gubbins of how stores work are moving away from a clever, committed person with a checklist on paper. We're needing to build systems now that allow us to scale. And another thing, sometimes, we're in our own bubbles. So, I live in London, have access to lots of stores. And so can be quite sniffy about, it's not as good as the store experience. But if you live in a tertiary city or town where you don't have flagship experiences, the web is becoming the flagship. And you'll then go into your local city and think, oh, that's a bit disappointing. That's a tier 3 store when I'm used to the online flagship. So, Alan, just tell us maybe about how retailers can cope with the new demands of these digital flagships. You've mentioned AR, we've mentioned 3D. Call me lazy, but that sounds like an awful lot of work. Photographing, gathering, cataloging. Hasn't that just gone onto the too hard pile? How can retailers reach those levels?
Well, I'm actually going to go back to the thing that we've both Imran and I have mentioned, AI. AI is we're seeing a lot of retailers actually, instead of going out and photographing and creating new stuff to put on their websites, actually realizing that they've got archives of material going back decades in some cases, that they can actually go use AI to mine the product information that they've got, using AI to mine the photography and the video that they've already got and create new assets, and put the right tags around it, so they can do things like understand that this image is, here's an image that we took for a photo shoot that's got a model playing volleyball, and maybe we took that to promote the shirt, but hang on, he's also wearing shorts and a baseball hat and a belt and shoes. So using AI to go in and recognize them and then putting them on the SKU, so they can then go online and with the e-commerce site, you can start doing things like these recommendations at scale. So when somebody comes in to buy a shirt, it's like, maybe you want to buy this baseball hat that goes with this shirt. Maybe you want to buy these shorts that goes with this shirt. And driving all of that from the content that they've actually already got by using AI to go in and recognize it and then connect those imagery and the assets, with the product information, with the SKUs, with the delivery information that we were talking about earlier. So
I just
at scale, but using AI, sorry, Imran, using AI, you can do that at scale and at speed to do the things that you were talking about when you've got that 45x increase in demand.
Great, Imran.
I was going to say is to just always be cautious. The whole black box, and we talked that other buzzword that's been going around for years in terms of personalization. That whole personalization and recommendation, AI definitely can help, but try not to let it be controlled by a black box. So for us, it's always about AI can help, but you want to keep the creative control still within the merchandiser's hands, but look at the ways in which you can use AI to inform, but also remove some of the manual tasks, like you're saying, Alan, especially in terms of image recognition and then tagging, and aligning that to kind of search rules and then recommendations. It's that bit of don't let your brand become controlled by the black box, because it's the value of your merchandisers, which is really important. We just want to try and make their lives a lot easier so they can do more, especially given, as you're saying here, 60% of sales now with John Lewis are online. That's a huge jump in terms of the level of resource and demand on that team. So if we can look at automating some of the manual tasks, and there are a lot that people are having to do, we can start to improve their efficiency to give them back time to curate wonderful collections like Selfridges. I mean, Selfridges, their edit is just something that, they, as you say, in terms of the villages and areas of where they may not have a flagship store, it's why people come to the site, because they want to see what is the fashionistas thinking about as the latest, greatest, and the edit's a perfect example of that.
Yeah, I would actually also say that, at Nexio, we're very strong proponents of, even though we have an AI solution, of making sure that you have a human in the loop in the process who can do periodic checks on what the AI is doing and actually teach the AI and make the AI better by actually helping. It's not about the AI replacing the merchandiser. It's about the AI being a tool to work alongside the merchandiser so they can get rid of the boring, repetitive tasks and actually do the things that they're good at, which is the recognition of what the products are and how they go together and how you could curate the collections.
Yes, or curate the corrections. Yes, I'm sure that's coffee at this time of the day. So just a few other points then, because we'll come back to AI to round off. But here's something else that is interesting: how flexible retailers have been, by increasing payment options, increasing tracking, and helping people get their lockdown offices ready. We've seen New Look flexing around extending returns capability. And again, I think there's been some good communication here saying we'll extend the amount of time you can return, but we're sorry to say it's going to take us a little bit longer. So being human, getting ahead of the realities, but doing the right thing for the consumer. And again, looking at new lines of business and accelerating the shift. I think it was Sainsbury's, maybe back in the late 90s, that tried to have a digital prescription for in-store. It was a standalone project, didn't come to fruition. Someone correct me if I've got the wrong gross at the wrong time, but it was definitely a very long time ago. So Boots, that initially, at the start of the pandemic, it took them 6 days to even put a sorry, due to COVID, we don't have any Purell or hand sanitizer left. They were very slow to respond. Have actually stepped up quickly by having things like pharmacy online, beauty services, virtual consultations. Things that would have taken, I think, a long time to get through their processes have been accelerated. So back to that whole innovation thing. So that's all I had to abstract from the report. My apologies to our amazing research team that together put nearly 300 pages of research together. So it's my fault if I've taken the wrong slides. Do let us know. But maybe we can just now, and also make sure you get the report. Retail X is the UK 2020. So I think the digital pixies will now remove that slide so we can get back to chatting. Look at that. Who needs AI when we have real people? Thank you. So I've said AI again. Enough of the AI. Let's be real about it. My question is, if everyone's got AI, why is your AI better than anyone else's AI? Question number one. And question number two is, are your AIs going to talk to each other and have little AI children? So Imran, do you want to kick us off on that?
So I think we're in this place where AI, there's a baseline of what you can get with AI and the AI algorithm from many vendors, including us and many others. But there's a baseline of AI of what it can do. And, for us, it's a case of, it's not a black box. For us, it's a case of, here's the algorithms, here's a baseline of what it can do. And that but is, where you start to add your differentiation is how you then go and train that algorithm. So there's a baseline of it being able to do very popular use cases. So be it, let's say, personalization, product recommendations, there's a baseline there. So it can get you started, and usually you'd get a decent return in terms of conversion or whatever. But I think where it becomes really interesting, and to your point of how do we ensure we're not all using the same AI, is then that next stage of the journey, which is when you start to optimize it, when you start to kind of train it based on what you believe is your brand values and your differentiation. And I think that's the IP that starts to become really interesting in the next few years, and how people will differentiate.
Yeah.
And Alan, do you see this with the content side as well? Because from your earlier comments, I was left with this sort of dichotomy between, there's the basic stuff, identify trousers, add trouser tag, but then there's the higher level stuff. So when my teens are shopping, they're talking about product attributes that, frankly, as they tell me, I am too old and boring to ever understand. So balancing, if you like, the high volume, low value hygiene stuff with the distinctive brand consumer interface. How do you approach that?
Well, actually, just to Imran's point, the way we approach it at Nexio with our AI solution is, and this is not meant to be a product pitch, it's just answering your question, but we integrate with all the generic AI that's out there that you can get off the shelf. The standard stuff that does things like face, like you said, it would recognize it was a shirt. It may even recognize it's a red shirt, but it wouldn't recognize what brand it is. So if you're an apparel company that has multiple brands, you want to be able to recognize what brand that is, maybe what season it is, maybe who the model is in the photograph, whether you have a contract with them as to which markets where you can use that ad, particularly if it's a celebrity or things like that. So what we do is we integrate with all the generic stuff out there, but then allow our clients to build business-specific AI models on top of that give them the things that are important to their business, things that they want to recognize from their business, and then be able to link that to their product information systems and things like that. So yes, you can get that. As you said, everybody's got that same baseline, but what we allow our clients to do is build the AI on top of the stuff that allows them to do the things that they want. So, our AI is used by apparel companies, but it's also used by hospitality companies. One of our big AI users is a chain of hotels that goes in and tags. When they open a new hotel, they take thousands of photographs, and they want to get those on their website so people can book the rooms. And it's like having somebody manually go through and say, oh, that's a conference room, that's a bedroom, blah blah blah, delays them opening a hotel. But by training the AI on what that hotel needs, they can go through in seconds and sort 3,000 photographs in seconds and get the stuff up on the website, and people can start booking rooms. So it's a question of, yes, everybody's got those baseline applications, but what's that as you said, what's that differentiator, and training your AI for that differentiator. And that's where the human in the loop comes in, because it's your humans who know your business and your products, and they can apply that added value and work alongside the AI.
Now, if any of the attendees for this session are looking for a tax deductible opportunity, then I suggest, gents, that we become joint executive producers of a new film, The Human in the Loop. So I think, Alan, you've given us the title there. So, suggestions on a postcard to Retail X TV Limited, and we'll take that forward. So what next then? It is March. The daffodils are out. The vaccine will soon be in all our veins. How does the rest of the year look for you? Just round us off with, Imran, your prediction of how it's going to be and what retailers need to do. So 2 questions. What's going to happen? What should retailers be doing? Then we'll go to Alan.
Sure. So obviously it's a case of trying to help get people back in stores, for sure. For the industry, we need to try and do that. But I think what I've heard even the beginning of this year is some retailers, there has been some talk about rip and replace of, as you said, that system that you referred to. And for me, it's a case of, from a commerce and a digital perspective, now is not the time to do a big, lengthy rip and replace. If anything, it is a case of trying to chip off certain elements of what that system is doing, and maybe look at how you can kind of chip some pieces of that, let's say, monolithic commerce platform to something that's best of breed. So one example is, search and merch has become hugely important. One of the reasons I moved to Attract. But instead of just completely ripping out an existing, let's say, solar search, which is generally what a lot of enterprises use, is quite complex and it's complex for a reason, given their SKUs, volume, etc. But let's not talk about ripping and replacing things out. There are ways in which you can chip away at this stuff and layer things on, so that you can keep going with the business, start seeing incremental change and benefit without doing big, lengthy rip out replace projects. So I think it's around that, looking at what you're doing and trying to look at how to chip away for incremental benefit rather than big rip and replaces, because it's not the time to be doing that given the current situation.
Now, what we're hearing as well is that the appetite for big projects has gone. So the big projects have become big but short, get them done, harvest the ROI and keep moving. So that definitely chimes. Alan, rest of the year, and what should we be thinking about?
Well, rest of the year, hopefully things will continue to improve and start to move towards back to normal. But as early 2020 showed, this time last year, we wouldn't have been able to think about what was happening and the impact it was had. So I guess, it's trying to predict the future is a dangerous game, and at the moment it's even more dangerous than normal. But hopefully things continue to head in the right direction. I think in terms of what retailers should be thinking about, I want to go back to an earlier comment I made. I think retailers need to move towards that realization that digital and in-store is not two separate activities anymore. And it's not going to be two separate activities going forward. It's got to be a continuous experience for the customer. As you said, we're all walking in there with our mobile phones. We're all walking into the store with a digital experience already in our pocket. We've already thought about things. So I think retailers need to be, even if they don't have plans in place now, should start thinking about plans in place that when we go back to the in-person one, how can we merge all those rapid advances we've made on the digital side, and how is that going to play with the in-person experience going forward, and make it a continuous thing?
Well, I think we've touched on many points: online, offline, service, expectations, and experience, all sprinkled with AI and a touch of human in between, the human in the machine. So, gents, thank you both for joining us. And of course, thank you everyone for lending us some of your day. I hope you found this useful. All of the charts, remember, are available for you. The reports are free of charge for retailers, so you can download them, keep them, share them with your family as an early Christmas present, whatever makes you happy. But for now, all I have to do is, from our digital studio, thank our guests, Imran and Alan. Thank you both, and look forward to speaking with you again. And likewise, we hope you enjoyed the rest of e-commerce World Review. Let us know what you thought about it and what you want to have next. But in the meantime, here's wishing you all happy trading.
Thank you.
Thank you.